Welcome to Stand Up for Doctors. I'm your host, Kim Downey. Thank you very much for joining us. I'd like to welcome Dr. Una. Thanks for joining us today, Dr. Una.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. Looking forward to this.
I'm really looking forward to it too. And I'll have you introduce yourself in a moment, but by way of a brief introduction, Dr. Una is a pediatrician by training, a serial entrepreneur, and founder of the EntreMD Business School, the #1 business school for physician entrepreneurs. And that is awesome. And so we share over 400 mutual connections, and we know some of the same awesome doctors. And a couple that immediately come to mind would be Dr. Tamara Beckford and Dr. Michael Hirsch. And another one of them is Dr. Mary Long, who I've had here on the channel before, and I was honored to meet her in person. And she thought I should have you on, so here we are.
Here we are. I have to thank her for that.
Yeah, me too. And so today we'll be talking about how to thrive in medicine today, building your dream business and life concurrently. And I always start by asking, what would you most like our audience to know about you as we begin our conversation? And you can include hobbies, anything you want.
Yeah, I think the most important thing would be, that I'm like every other physician, and I started off my journey as an entrepreneur as a super shy, socially awkward, introverted introvert. And so if you're an introvert, you're not excluded. And, it started at, my training, I'm a pediatrician, which, we all know is one of the lowest paying specialties. And a lot of pediatricians feel like, well, there's no hope for me per se, like I'm stuck here. And, entrepreneurship is a great equalizer, as far as giving you an opportunity to have as much impact as you want to have, as much financial freedom, time freedom, like you can still create what it is, whatever it is that you want. And like you said, I'm a big believer in the dream business and the dream life, because I think that we've sacrificed so much, right? Like, in high school, you're sacrificing to get into a great pre-med program. You get into pre-med, you're sacrificing to get into med school. You do med school, you're sacrificing, to get into a good residency program and on, and only for you to be done. And it seems like the sacrifice needs to continue, which we do need to do things. But at some point, you still have to pay attention to your family, pay attention to the other aspects of your life. And I'm like, yeah, we can build careers that we love, businesses that we love, and build our dream lives concurrently. And so it's kind of really, really out of the box, but I'm a firm believer. I've walked that way. I've helped many people walk that way. And physicians, I think, this is a time to embrace that as the new normal.
Absolutely. To all of that, I've heard those stories, you right, like over and over again. Would you like to share a bit how you made that transition from a pediatrician to being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, that's a fun story. I started off, first of all, in med school is like, what are you going to do when you're done? I'm like, I don't know, but I'm not going to be a pediatrician. So I say the joke is on me because, that's where I ended up. So I finished medical school in Nigeria, moved over to New Jersey and did my training there. And, it's kind of like you're coming towards the end of the road and super exciting. This thing I've been working on for over a decade. And I got my first job and I was super excited. Walked in, still remember seeing my first patient. I'm like, the buck stops with me. I'm an attending now. Saw the patient, made the diagnosis pretty easily, signed, wrote the prescription, signed it. I'm like, here you go. They're like, thank you, doc. You're amazing. And I walk out of that room and it's the most anticlimactic feeling because then I'm like, so I'm just going to do what I just did 25 times a day, 5 days a week till I'm 65. Like something has to give. Like there's something wrong with this picture. And not that I wasn't grateful for where I was, but it's like you've arrived. That's it, the end. And, I remember thinking that there has to be more. And, this was in 2008. So I don't really have any concept of consulting or coaching or speaking or any of these things. Like I had no concept of them, but I just knew there had to be more. And, my boss at the time, after I'd worked there for 9 months, is like, okay, here you go. Here's a contract. I love working with you. I'd love to continue working with you. It's a 5-year contract. And I loved working with him. There's no reason not to do that. But I was like, okay. At the time, I had been married for 3 years and I had just finished a 3-year residency. So my definition of forever was 3 years. So I'm like, I'm thinking 5 years is like a gazillion years. but I was moving. So I said, I'm not going to be able to stay. I love you here, but I'm not going to be able to stay. And he says, okay, go start your own practice. I'm like, that is the craziest thing I've ever heard. Like nobody starts a practice 9 months out of residency. And he said, well, you're doing most of the things that you would do here anyway. And so if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. I said, okay, you may have missed this ginormous bump here. I'm pregnant. Like, this is not the time. And he said, no, in the beginning, your practice will need you as much your baby will. And when your baby needs you less, the practice will need you more. It'll be just fine.
Mm.
Now, that was really gracious of him and kind of him, but I also will say ignorance is bliss because I was like, yeah,
Mm.
I mean, like, yeah, of course we can start a practice. And so we start looking at buildings. We find a place that's already built out, so I didn't have to have this scare of building something else. And we started the practice. And my philosophy was hang the shingle and they will come. And I
Mhm.
hung the shingle. Oh, and they did not come. They did not
Mhm.
come at all. Like my practice was an hour away from where I practiced before. So there are no patients following me or anything like that. And then I realized I had to do other things. Like I
Mm.
had to do business things. And I didn't realize how unprepared I was. And again, socially awkward, super shy, introvert. I was like, I'm not going to go talk to people. Like that's not happening,
Mhm.
And I remember the turning point for me. I was reading a book by Brian Tracy called "Eat That Frog." Fantastic book. Everybody should get a copy. And he said all business skills are learnable. I was like, hang on. I was like, wait a minute. You mean the people running amazing practices are not like just better than me, and that's what it is, and I suck? Like I
Uh-huh.
can learn stuff? I said, I may not know many things, but I'm a physician. If there's anything I'm great at, it's learning. And
Mm.
so then I started learning marketing, selling, how to hire, how to build company culture, all of these things. And that's when I realized like there's you, the clinician, and there's you, the entrepreneur. They're two different people. And the clinician has been developed over 10 years, but the
Mhm.
business person hasn't at all. And that's when I fell in love with learning the concepts of business and everything that's a problem. It's not really a problem. It just means it's a skill I don't have that I need to go acquire. And so we got the practice working like fairly quickly after that, like relatively. And I was just so grateful. I read a book by Michael Gerber, the E-Myth physician, and just had this concept of building a practice that is a business asset. It's not my job. It's a system that can work whether I'm there or
Mhm.
not. And so, I was probably 2 years in when I hired somebody. I could not imagine a doctor's salary being on my payroll. Okay. So, but
Mhm.
I could hire somebody for a day. Right. And so I had a doc who worked with me worked every Friday. So I took Fridays off. And so I had a long weekend every weekend. Right. And the business, the practice was profitable and all of those things happened. So that was that very first big turning point. The
Mhm.
second turning point, we'll call it more intuition than anything else, because this was in 2016. I remember, being in my home office in morning, just done with my time, prayer, meditation, all of that. And I just had this thing like medicine as we know it is gone. If all you know how to do is put your hands on patients and doctor, you're going to be out of luck. Like it's time to retool, it's time to learn other skills and all of that. And again, I had no idea there's a whole other world out there.
Mhm.
And so I was like, okay, what could I do? I was like, well, I have a successful practice. Maybe I can show other people how to do that. So I wrote that down. I said, I mean, people are authors and they build a career that way. I wrote that down. I could be a speaker. People are speakers and they
Mhm.
build a whole careers. And I want you to imagine this, okay? Super shy, socially awkward, introvert. So I was writing possibilities like, dreams in the sky. These were not things I was like, of course I could do that, right? And then I started embracing this concept of retooling myself, like adding new skills. Like even with my practice, there's the position of the lead pediatrician, but there's also the CEO. Those are they're two different positions. I could learn to be that. Like my value as a CEO, what I bring to the table can be so much. I could replace my physician salary doing that. And so I started doing that in about a year in. I was like, okay, hang on. Things are not just going to be bad for me. Things are going to be
Mhm.
bad. At the time, it was 800,000 physicians licensed in the US. It's like things are going to be bad for 800,000 physicians. So, how about I take people along, with me on the journey? And that's literally how EntreMD was born. I was like, these are
Mhm.
things I'm learning. Come on, guys. But things are about to get really bad. Now it makes more sense. 8 years ago, At the time it was recorded
Right.
8 years ago, it didn't make sense at all. Like, what are you talking about? I'm like, listen to me. Things have changed. And so, we've done that for about, 6 years at this point, and it's been such a joy for me to completely retool myself and then to help so many other physicians do the same.
Wow. Oh, I love that story. That's so fascinating. So I'm wondering for the introverts out there, if you can speak to that a little, how you got the confidence to do the speaking and all the things that you do as an introvert. Because people
Yeah,
probably wouldn't believe that you were intro or that you are or were, right?
yeah, people find it very hard to believe. They're like, "What? There's no way." I'm like, "I
Mhm.
promise you." Actually, this will help somebody who's an introvert. I was such an introvert that when I would go to an event, I had a strategy. And so I would come as late as possible and still be early, right? So I'll come on
Mhm.
time, but late
Mhm.
enough that I don't have to have all these drawn out conversations. I'd go straight to the back. I'd find one person to talk to so nobody else will feel the need to talk to me. Like that's how
Wow.
I was strategic about being an introvert,
Yeah,
right?
right.
But there are a number of things that happen. One is that I realized that I had the definition of being an introvert like completely upside down. Because for me, being an introvert means that I'm shy. I'll never dominate on stage. I could never network. I'm not that kind of person. I'll have a big personality on stage. Like that's just not something that would happen. And it was a handicap. That was my perception of being an introvert. Now, my definition of being an introvert now is very different. And what it means is for me is that when I'm in these big social settings, it is not necessarily energizing for me, it's draining for me, which
Mhm.
is neither good nor bad. It's just an observation.
Mhm.
And I draw my strength from solitude. And
Mhm.
so, knowing what I know now, if I go to an event, I speak on stage, I do all of that, I know before I go on stage, I'm not spending a ton of time doing social stuff because it's going to drain me before I even get on stage. And
Mhm.
when I'm done with that, I'm going to go take a walk by myself. I'm going to go take a long shower, whatever, just be by myself because that's the way I recharge, right? So that was the first thing. This is just how do we recharge in solitude or with other people? So that was the first thing. The second thing was I realized speaking, networking, all of those things are skills. They're not personality types, right? Like
Mhm.
there's not, it's a skill. There's a skill of speaking. The same way we can learn to run codes, like, there's code blue, we know what to do,
Mhm.
is the same way we learn how to speak. There's a framework, there's training for it and all of that. And so I can get good at that. I
Mhm.
can get good at networking.
Mhm.
It's a skill. It has nothing to do with whether I'm introvert. So there are people who are extroverts, but are not skilled speakers.
Mhm.
And I will shine on stages. They cannot shine in that same way, even though I'm an introvert, because I've
Mhm.
learned the skill of speaking.
Mhm.
Right. Like, so it's a skill. It's not a personality type. So whether you're introvert or extrovert, you can thrive in those things. And I think the third thing is just this concept of doing it scared. Like whatever
Mhm.
you're doing, just do it scared. Stop waiting to feel confident. Stop waiting to feel a certain way. You do it scared. The next time you do, you'll be less scared. The next time you do, you'll be less scared. Sometimes the fear never really goes away. I've had times
Mhm.
recently that I've been on stage and, before I got on stage, like, oh my goodness, what if that? What if that? Those thoughts never really go away. We just kick them out of the driver's seat. They don't get to vote anymore. Right.
Mhm.
And so, to every introvert, I'm like, you can be a great speaker, you can be great at networking, you can show up really confidently. You're not excluded from those things because you're an introvert. Just got to recognize that your introversion is even a superpower because I spend so much time in solitude. I, my level of thinking, my ability to visualize, my ability to take complex things and make them simple because I spend so much time with them because I'm alone. I'm
Mhm.
with myself.
Mhm.
So it's whether you're introvert or extrovert, it is your superpower. You just need to know how. So I don't see it as a handicap anymore. I see it as one of my greatest gifts being an introvert.
Yeah, that's terrific. And Dr. Charity Hicks specializes in coaching introverts. So I've learned a lot of this because I had a misunderstanding of what was introvert and what was extrovert too. So I love the fact that you really explained that. And then that the certain things are skills. that anyone can learn. So that's fantastic. So I'm wondering if there's some doctors out there that might be curious about becoming an entrepreneur, right? Because all doctors are stressed, they're struggling. We all know the problems with the system. But what if they have no idea, if they're just so, busy every day, do like you said, going from room to room and all of that, where would they even start?
Yeah, so the starting point, there are many starting points. So I think the first thing is to realize we don't have a choice.
Mm,
Like we have to take back control, take back responsibility for the outcome of our careers. Nobody's going to do that for us. None of the players, the insurance company is not going to do that. Big Pharma is not going to do that. No administrator is going to do that. No, like nobody's going to do that. And it's time for us to take back control. Like we need to get back into the driver's seat. And I will pause here to say, when I talk about entrepreneurship for everybody, I include the employed physician. We call them intrapreneurs. And that means you're still showing up, understanding that I don't work for this company. I work for a company called Dr. Me Incorporated, and I give this other company 8 hours of my time, right? So you're still in control and you still have a personal brand, and your personal brand can take you places like what you consider business, like a brick and mortar business can never take somebody, right? And so there's still the opportunity to do podcasts, to do books. You may not even want to do that. There's the opportunity to learn how to network, to negotiate like a boss for the work environment you want and the pay you want and all of that. It all starts from being an entrepreneur. So this is for everybody. Okay. So starting point, we don't have a choice. Nobody is going to create that magical dream career for us or dream business for us. That is our responsibility. And once we come to terms with that, then we can no longer say we don't have the time. The question then becomes, how do we find the time? Because this is a non-negotiable, right?
mm,
It's kind of like somebody whose his twin brother is getting married. You don't say, I'm working a shift, I can't be there. You figure it
mhm,
out, right? Like it's a
mhm.
non-negotiable. So,
Right.
so that's number one. The second thing, I tell a lot of docs, like we create the time, and I'll give you a few examples. We create the time, and someone say, but I don't have time. But this is the deal, though. As physicians, we are gifted with a relatively high earning power.
Mhm,
And when you don't have the time, you have to remember that time is more valuable than money.
mhm,
And you make money. And one of the blessings you have is you can use that money to buy the time of others,
mhm,
right? So if you don't have time, but you're cooking, you're cleaning, you're doing laundry, you're doing all the shopping, you're doing the grocery shopping, you're planning all the parties, you're doing all your email, all your calendaring, all of those things, you can get somebody who can take that off your plate.
mhm,
And all of a sudden, guess what you have? Time.
mhm.
Right.
Right.
And whether that is as simple as an executive assistant, a virtual assistant, I'm talking like like anybody can have this and buy back hours and hours of their time. And some of them, it may not even be a hire. I had a client who was like, oh my goodness, I have all this work, I have all this, things. I just don't have enough time. And then when I started talking to her about this concept, she's like, hang on, I have people who have been begging me. Like they would take my kids for their basketball practice. They'll pick my kids from school. They'll do all this. And I just assumed I didn't need any help. So I never said yes to any of them.
Mhm,
Right there on the spot, she started reaching out to them. She bought back 10 hours a week
mhm,
just by saying yes to people who are already asking her for help. Right.
mhm,
And so is this concept of how can I buy back some of my time so I can yet then use that time to work on, my life and all that. And we also have a lot of distractions, right? Like, so we're doctors, we're busy. We still do Netflix binges. We
mhm,
still spend 3 hours on social media. We still do all of those things. And the question then becomes, me having a career that I curated, that is exactly what I want, me having a business that's profitable, is impacting a lot of people, and all of that, is it worth me giving up my distractions?
mhm.
Right? Is it worth me giving
Right.
up my distractions? And then you can buy your time back. So that's the second thing. So the first is recognizing this is non-negotiable. Second is buy your time back. And the third thing is coming to terms with the fact that you must get a business education. Must. This is mandatory. And when I say business education, I don't mean MBA, but you have to learn the skills that are required for a business to thrive. I see this a lot where people get upset with their bosses, they quit and they go and start private practices. I'm like, well, wow, we are missing a number of steps that need
Mm-hmm.
to happen here, because guess what you're going to need to do? You're going to need to learn, you're going to need to market, you're going to need to sell, you're going to need to build company culture, you're going to need to hire rock stars, you're going to need to know how to fire, you're going to need to know how to control revenue. Like these are all skills that need to be learned. And we did not get any training. We don't need to fool ourselves. We did not get any training in our medical education, to figure these things out. And so the more skills you acquire, the less painful the journey will be,
Mm-hmm.
period. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so people are like, well, what do I do? I mean, you can start, the starting point could be podcasts that you listen to, right? Like, so for your YouTube channel, like subscribe immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Subscribe immediately to this YouTube channel that you're watching, right? I have a podcast, it's an EntreMD podcast. We talk shop all day, every day. You subscribe to that, you start learning those concepts. There are books, right? I've written a number, there are many business books. It's time to start reading those. And like start acquiring those skills. And there are programs out there. Learn the skills. Sometimes people tell me, well, it's expensive to do that. I'm like, try ignorance.
Mm-hmm.
Try ignorance. Like people have launched businesses, thrown their whole life savings into it and lost it. And anybody who listens to my podcast knows that I'm a very positive person. So I'm not trying to say there's all this doom and gloom. But the truth of the matter is, we got to build the skills so that we can thrive, period. And I think the fourth thing, especially for physicians, is, physician entrepreneurship is not mainstream yet. It's still
Mm-hmm.
considered weird. There are many people who are not doing it. It's like, this is not something that physicians do. And so if you want to be somebody who thrives as a physician entrepreneur, you really want to find communities of entrepreneurs, especially physician entrepreneurs. So you're around people who are like you. You're around people who are easily doing what you're struggling to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, we become like our environment. And when I say environment, I mean the people in our lives, right? And so you find those circles and you insert yourself in those circles, so you can become like them. It's the ultimate cheat code, I think. You find people who are thriving at something you're struggling at, and you just insert yourself. And before you know what is happening, it normalizes the challenges. You don't feel like falling apart when a challenge starts, because they have bigger challenges and they're still going, right? You don't say, oh, this dream, this can never be, because they've done that. You've been there, done that. They have 10 t-shirts already. And usually when you are in an environment of high flyers, they are willing to support,
Mm-hmm.
And so there's some things that need to be done. I think those are great starting points.
Yeah, well, thank you. No, all that is really good. And I think the first thing you started by saying is to buy yourself some time, or somehow get time. Because if you're just in the morning, you're getting up, you're going to work, you're there all day, you're checking your emails and your labs and all that, and you go to bed and start the next day, that you need to give yourself some space and time to just consider possibilities and options, and then just taking the one next step, whether it's listening to a podcast or reading a book or finding a physician community, or just something to take one step, and then you can, build your path from that one step, right?
That's the magic. The magic is in the next step. And I like that you said it that way, because a lot of times we miss that. We think it's some big thing that we have to do. But then we're in analysis paralysis and we're not doing anything. If we can just learn to put one step in front of the other, doing one scary thing at a time,
Mhm.
where we will find ourselves would shock us, like in the best possible way.
Right. So tell us about all the things that you do.
Oh man. So, at this stage in my career, I spend my time supporting physicians, and I'll tell you where it comes from. It really is this place of, I started studying movements, like what needs to happen for there to be a movement, because there's so much pain in the physician community. And I read that if you can help 10, if 10% of a community shifts, the whole community shifts. I'm like,
Mm.
okay. So here I am, Google, how many licensed physicians are in the US? It's a million at this point. I
Mhm.
said, okay, 10% is 100,000 people. And I said, okay, so this is my mission. I'm going to help 100,000 physicians build profitable businesses so they have the freedom to live life and practice medicine on their terms. And I was like, if I can do that, then the whole physician community shifts, the whole narrative shifts. So that's my mission, right? Okay, so we started doing this in different ways, and I'll tell you at this point there are three main ways we do that. So the first way is through the EntreMD podcast. And the EntreMD podcast, I've had people who would send me messages and like, how in the world are you giving away all this stuff for free? Like, why don't you? I mean, you could make that a course. You could do this. You can do that. I was
Mhm.
like, yeah, my mission is 100,000 people. I can't put
Mhm.
100,000 people in the containers I have now. So I need to be able to serve them. I say that to say it's not fluff. It's not
Mhm.
like, an hour-long sales pitch. It's not any of those things. We talk about the things you need to do to thrive. We talk about how to build visibility for your business, the mindset shifts that need to happen, the strategies, how to sell as a professional, how to market, how to build team, how to interview, how to all of those things. And it's wonderful. So we call it the free MBA. Okay, it's a free
Mhm.
MBA for physicians everywhere. So that's the first thing. The second thing is then we started doing a lot of books because I said I have all these frameworks that if doctors can just follow them, it will totally transform their businesses, their lives. And so we started putting them in books. And so we did the EntreMD Method book. We did the visibility formula, how to take your business from best kept secret to household name. The most recent one was the Profitable Private Practice Playbook, 7 ways private practice owners leave money on the table and how to fix it. And so we have all these books, and again, not fluff. If you read the book and
Mhm.
you read a chapter and you do the chapter, read another chapter, do the chapter, it will rock your world. It will
Mhm.
completely rock your business. And so we call our books the $15 MBAs, right? Like you get an
Yeah.
MBA and it's only $15. And then there are some people who are like, no, like I'm all in. I know what I need. I need mentorship. I need a community of physician entrepreneurs. I need accountability. And I want to go all in. I want to totally transform my life. I want to be the person who can take a business to 7 figures or multiple 7 figures. For some people, they already have established businesses, but the business is making revenue, it's not making any profit. The bigger the business gets, the more stressed out they get because they haven't learned how to master their time and all of these things. And we bring them into the EntreMD Business School, and that's our year-long program. And it's all about is all the things, well, 4 main things that you need to know to build a profitable business, which is making that transition from great clinician to great clinician and savvy entrepreneur, right? Because we need to have both of those. How to build a dominant brand, how to generate revenue, the same way you know how to run a code, you know how to run the reps to
Mhm.
create revenue, how to build a profitable team. So you're no longer scared of your payroll because your payroll is an investment now instead of an expense. These are the things we focus on all year long. And then with the accountability, with the course correction, with the support when you're going through challenges, so that on the other side, you have this business and you have your dream life, right? Because we want both of them.
Mhm.
And so those are the three big ways we support physicians. And it's just been, I mean, it's been one of my life's greatest honors to do that. And just watching doctors go from employed physician to wildly successful private practice owner or coach or consultant or speaker. Or so we have a doc who's an artist. She's
Mhm.
an artist and she's crushing it with her art business. It's just so fun. It's so fun to see. And they will tell you that, this is amazing what's happened with my business, but the biggest reward has been in my personal life. Some of them is their marriages. Some of them is the time they now spend with their kids. Some of them is their kids now becoming entrepreneurs because they've watched them.
Mhm.
Some of them taking vacation for the first time in, 10 years or whatever. And yeah, doctors, we can have an alternate reality. It doesn't have to be this way at all.
All right. Well, that is fantastic. And I was wondering how the business school, if anybody's wondering, actually works. Is it something online once a week? How exactly does it work?
Yeah, so we do a number of things. So, once a week, we have a strategic session. So this is live, is virtual. Most of them are with me. Sometimes we'll bring some guests in there. And for this year, oh, you want to hear something fun? So for 2025, I have this big, hairy, audacious goal. And I said, you know what? We see so many businesses go out of business, and the issue is cash flow. And a lot of times we like to go like, we don't want to talk about money, but it's cash flow that's getting people out of the game. And so we set out to say, okay, we're going to help 100 people cross the $100,000 mark. 75 people cross 500,000, 25 people, 50 people cross a million, 25 people add a million to their businesses that are already doing a million. Okay. So that's across the board, inside the school, outside the school. So in the school, we have these live sessions we call RevCon, where we just come in, we're like, okay, let's talk about your revenue, what's working, what's not working, how can we help, and all of that. So what it does is it keeps people in a position where they're majoring on the major. Now, patient care, client care, all of that always comes before revenue, but revenue is a close second that we like to pretend is not a thing, but we make it a thing. So we have these live sessions every Wednesday, it's virtual and everything is recorded. So if people need to catch the replay, they'll do that. We have a private Facebook group where the community lives, and it is the most active and the most positive physician Facebook group I have ever been in.
Mm,
People come there, they share their real challenges. People come out and support them. They're free to share their real wins. Like, we crossed a
mhm,
million in revenue, and nobody judges them.
mm,
Everybody celebrates them. People come to ask their questions. People will come out and answer them and things like that. People are about to go on stage. Oh my goodness, I feel like I'm losing my mind. I don't know if I can do
mhm,
this. And people come out like, of course you can. Come on, let's go. Right. Or I'm going to hire this position and stuff like that. They connect each other to resources. It's like unbelievably amazing. And then we have what we call the CEO Power Hour, because there are things we know to do that we don't do. We call them frogs, right? And we come, so once a week, people just get on a call, they come together, positive peer pressure, and they just eat frogs. Okay. They do all the things that are really good for their businesses that they wouldn't otherwise do. And it helps them move their businesses forward, right? Like that's what that does. We have a book of the month, like it's like a book club, carefully curated. Like, read this, totally
mm.
change your business. Let's go. And so, like many great books we've read, and we do that every month. There's a recommendation, and then we have in-person events twice a year, and those are
Right. Right.
absolutely
Mm,
wild. They're so amazing because you can literally see the transformations happening in real time,
mhm,
right? And people will tell you like, it's a non-negotiable for me. I just go because every time I go, I walk away a different person. I walk away with so much momentum. I walk away having this, like dismantled so many things that were obstacles for me and things like that. So we do that as well. So, and everything has a purpose. It's all designed to take the doctor to dream business, dream life, right? It's no fluff.
mhm.
Like, let's just go there. Let's make it happen.
Huh. Well, I love all of this, and I feel like I could ask you questions for hours, but unfortunately, we need to be winding down. Is there any other last tips that you wish to share? And also, how can our audience get in touch with you?
Yeah, so the one tip I will leave is, wherever you find yourself in your business, in your career, don't not take the next step.
Mm,
Because we can know a lot of things, we can read a lot of things and all of that, but the magic is really in taking that next uncomfortable step, because the
mm,
comfort zone is where great businesses, great dreams, great opportunities go to die. That's the only thing that happens in a comfort zone. All the magic is outside the comfort zone. So at every point in time, like right now, ask yourself, okay, based on this conversation, what is that next thing I need to do that is kind of uncomfortable, but will open a whole new door for me? Just say
mm,
yes to it. You'll feel scared because you've never done it before. You'll feel scared because outside your comfort zone. You go like, what if I mess this up? Your life is already the way it is based on what you've done. The only way to create something new is to do something different. So, Nike style, just do it, right? And so that would be my last word, or, thing I
mhm.
want people to remember. And as far as where to find us, our starting point will be our website is EntreMD, so ENTRE, like entrepreneur,
Mhm.
EntreMD.com. And you can find our podcast there. You can find our books there. And if you like to have a conversation with my team about, like the EntreMD Business School and all of that, you'll see like a button to book a call. So it's all there. And, we don't do any high pressure sales tactics and all of those things. So if you're truly curious and you're like, this might be something for me, don't be afraid to book a call. We really would just try to figure out where you're trying to go and if we are uniquely able to help you get there. And if we are, then we'll say, hey, like, take a look at this.
Oh, well, thank you for all that, and I loved hearing your story. So it's not like this just all happened, right? We heard the background, and yeah, and doctors are smart people, right? If you went through medical school, you could do any of this. You can learn any skill, and you can do whatever you want. So thank you again so much for being my guest, and I can't wait to share this episode.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you so much for what you're doing. We love physician allies. Love, love, love. Thank you.
Well, you're very welcome, and it just fills my heart every day. So, in closing, to move the needle in healthcare, we all need to raise our voices and we all need to care about each other. We already know that doctors need to care about patients, patients need to care about doctors too. So, stand up, doctors, and let's stand up for doctors.